our 47th parashah, which means that we only have a few parashot before we start the cycle all over again. And today is Re'eh. Say with me, Re'eh. It's not Re, it's Re. It just slides, and it means look, see, miren. In Spanish, we would say miren. And when we say miren, we're emphasizing that and saying, look. And it's Deuteronomy 11:26. And today's parashah goes to chapter 16, verse 17. And again, it begins in the middle of a paragraph. And it's talking about the blessing and the curse. There are 12 teachings here, 12 themes in our parashah for today. Of course, we could only go through each and every one of these in just a little kind of little morsels so that you could go back home and study it some more. And remember what we always say, from Wednesday to Shabbat, you study the parashah that's coming. From Shabbat to Wednesday, you go back and study the one we just did. And so it overlaps. And like that, we could see what the Ruach tells us. We see what we say here on Shabbat. And then you go back and start connecting even more dots. And so there's a lot of stuff today to unpack here. And again, this is the conclusion of the first sermon. Remember, the book of Deuteronomy, the book of Devarim, or the Mishnah Torah, which is what Deuteronomy means, Mishnah Torah, a repetition of the Torah, or nomos in Greek law, is made up of 3 sermons that Moshe gave us in his last month. This is the last month of his life. Deuteronomy is a summary. It's a repetition of everything that happened from Exodus to this point. And as we read there today, there's the blessing and the curse. Well, when they will get, this is still on the other side of the Yarden, the Jordan, on what we would call the east bank. He says, when you get there, you will now read the blessing and the curse. The blessing if you obey, the curse if you disobey. And this is modern Shechem, where Mount Gerizim and Mount Ebal are. And recently, a stone has been found here that shows us and gives us evidence that these occurred. We want to thank each and every one of you for joining us today, because one of the things that we want to really, I guess, emphasize is the idea that if we follow what Adonai says, there's blessings. Again, we're not talking about salvation in any of these. We're talking about blessings and curses, or being blessed and not being blessed, and even consequences that occur. And curses are usually consequences that occur when we don't do what Torah says. And so we want to make sure that everyone out there, not just in our little family here, but everyone throughout the world, everyone that is listening, that we come to that faith, to that walk, haderech, as we read, that walk of following what Adonai says. Here is a picture, kind of like here's Mount Gerizim, here's Mount Ebal, and there's Shechem, or Shechem as they say, but the Hebrew would be Shechem. And of course, there's the Sea of Galilee, the Mediterranean. And here's where the blessing and the curse were in Joshua's time were given. Here's a more close-up view. of Shechem and Nablus today. By the way, if you want good kanafe, Nablus has some of the best kanafe there is. This teaches us what we are learning right now, that Elohim has gifted each one of us with free will. Every one of us has been given free will. In fact, with our father Adam, a lot of people say, why did Adonai put the two trees? Why did he put the two trees there? Well, because that's love. Because that shows our love for Adonai. If he wouldn't have not put those trees there, we would have been robots. We would have been programmed to love him. And every time we said, I love you, I love you, I love you, what kind of love is that? Love has to be expressed from the heart. Obedience has to be expressed from deep within. And Adonai gave us that free will. He gave it to Adam. He's given it to Israel here in blessings and cursings. And every one of us has this free will. It's a gift from Adonai. So when I say, I love you, I bless you, it comes from the heart. By the way, when we don't do that, that also expresses a heart attitude of indifference towards Elohim, of not caring and not having that love. We have the ability to make choices for good or evil, for blessing or for a curse. These are the two roads, Haderech. In fact, with Abraham, he says, Haderech Yahweh. Abraham followed Haderech Yahweh, the way of Yahweh. And by the way, as we've said before many times, that is also the name of the first assembly, Haderech, the way, in the apostolic writings, especially the book of Acts. Each Israelite is free to choose. Each one of us today is free to choose. And every day, and that's why it's important for us to study Torah every day, study the Word every day. Because the more we study, the more we know and have that even discernment. In fact, this is a little rabbit trail, but the more of the Word you know, the more discernment you get. Because what you know, what you study, what you have in your heart, in your mind, that is what discernment comes. People that have a little bit of word knowledge, they have a little bit of discernment. The more word knowledge you have and have planted it in your heart and are living that, the more discernment you have, the more you have that opportunity to say, I will follow the good way. I will follow the good road, Haderech, the good road. And so we all have that choice. Now, chapter 12 begins a new sermon. And we call this the Deuteronomic Code. Adonai gives us, again, a repetition of what we've received already in Exodus, Leviticus, and Numbers. Exodus, Leviticus, and Numbers are in chronological order. And of course, in the book of Numbers, it is going to Kadesh Barnea, disobeying Adonai, and 40 years of being in the wilderness, and then coming to the far side of the Jordan, the east side of the Jordan, ready to go over, and Moshe's last days. Now, these are the Chukim and Mishpatim. Again, whatever the King James or English Bible say, some of them say these are the laws and statutes or the decrees, and There's all kinds of English words that are used here, but in Hebrew, we have these are the chukim and mishpatim. The chukim are always those laws, statutes, directives, judgments that sometimes don't make sense but need to be obeyed anyway, need to be followed. The mishpatim are those that we know why. Don't murder, don't commit adultery. All these, don't steal. All these have reason. Sometimes the hukim, many of them have reason, but some of them don't have rhyme or reason. The prime example that has been used is the red heifer. All those laws, statutes in reference to that, which you must keep in the land. Again, this is for in the land, which Yahweh your Elohim, the Elohim of your ancestors. Remember, always go back in our minds. We must always have that idea that we follow an Elohim of our ancestors, and our furthest ancestors that brought the way of Yahweh to the world. To the world is Abraham, Isaac, and Yaakov, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. These are our ancestors. These are our fathers. Yahweh, the Elohim of our ancestors, is giving you as yours. It is yours. He's giving this land to Israel, to the 12 sons, the 12 tribes, the Hebrews, the Israelites, and today, the Jewish people, which you must observe every day that you may live in the land. Look at that. That is conditional. Observe this every day that you may live in the land. Well, what happens if you do not obey that? If you disobey, then the land will push you out, as has occurred in 721 with Assyria coming and taking 10 tribes and spreading them in the east. As Babylon came in 586 and took Yehuda away to Babylon, Adonai brought them back. But living in the land is conditional on obeying the hukim and the mishpatim. Again, these are not salvation issues. Salvation is always by grace through faith. Adam had faith. Abel had faith. Abraham, the father of faith. Our ancestors, our patriarchs had faith. David had faith. Yes, David was a sinner, but he had faith. Faith is what touches the heart of Adonai to extend his grace. And he extends his grace down there, as we always say, he extends his grace down, his hand of grace, and we extend our hand of faith up, and that clasp is salvation. But the code, these mishpatim and hukim are about living in the land, about being blessed or not being blessed, having fruitfulness in our animals, in our produce. Adonai blesses and brings it in. But when we disobey, that's the curse. It goes away. It's even the land goes away. Now, Adonai here in 12:2 and 3 says, you must completely destroy all the places where the nations you dispose have served their Elohim. There's no such thing as Elohims, by the way. That's the computer tries to always put an S every time something is plural. It's the Elohim is already plural. On high mountains, on hills, under spreading trees, you must tear down their altars, smash their sacred stones, burn their sacred poles, hack to bits the statues of their Elohim, and obliterate their name from that place. And so all these standing stones, all these statues have to go down. Because our Elohim, we don't want to say is invisible. There's no statue that could be made of Elohim or anything in heaven or on earth, as we saw a couple of weeks ago, that we must bow down and serve. Our Elohim is eternal. And anything other is idolatry. Not only is it idolatry, but it's also a spiritual adultery to serve other Elim, to serve other gods, to serve other things. Because he says, do not bring all these before my face. Don't bring these before my face. No woman would bring to her husband a picture of someone else. That husband would become very jealous, and vice versa. Why? Because of that spiritual bond. Well, we have a spiritual bond with Adonai. We cannot have anything. And today, we're not only talking about these gods and statues that people serve. Here in the Southwest, we have all the Cocopalis, the Kachinas, and other nations have their own gods and spirits. We're also talking about anything that we would worship, anything that we would give our allegiance to, anything that we would give our money to, our time to, that is taken away from Adonai. Many people worship their cars, their houses, different things they worship. And so this is also talking about any pagan raiment, anything of Greco-Roman or Western culture or Eastern cultures, all those things that people have and do today. Beware lest your hearts be deceived and you turn away and serve other Elohim and worship them, in order that you may not associate with these nations, these which remain among you, or mention the name of their Elohim. Don't even mention their names. Or make anyone swear by them, or serve them, or bow down to them. So now fear Yahweh, and serve him truly, and sincerely. Banish the Elohim, the gods whom your ancestors served beyond the river in Egypt, and serve Yahweh. Now, think of this. Here in Joshua 24, our father Abraham's family, Terah, and their family in Ur, in Haran, they served other Elim, they served other gods. Abraham grew up. Abraham wasn't a Hebrew. He wasn't an Israelite. He wasn't a Jew. He was a Goy, a Goyim, from the nations. And Adonai says, Lech Lecha, get up for yourself and go to a land that I will show you, and I will give you a seed, and I will bless you. They served other Elim beyond the river and in Egypt. But if serving Yahweh seems a bad thing to you today, you must make up your minds. What do we have been given? Free will. You must make up your minds. Whom do you mean to serve? Whether the Elohim the gods whom your ancestors served beyond the river, or the gods of the Amorites in whose country you are now living. As regards my family and me, we will serve Yahweh. Even some of our family members could serve other Elohim. We still have family members that bow down to gods, bow down to statues, pray to statues even of members of Yeshua's family and his followers. They bow down to these statues of plaster that fall and break. As regards me and my house, me and my family, we will serve Yahweh. That is something that every one of us should constantly, almost, well, we would have as a creed, as a code, like the Shema. Shema Yisrael, Yahweh Eloheinu, Yahweh Echad. That's a code. That's part of our creed. That's something we believe in on a daily basis. This also should be like that. As for me and my house, we will serve Yahweh. Just like from the New Covenant, from the apostolic writings. Yeshua is Moshiach ben Elohim, the son of the living Elohim. That's another one of those codes that every day. Yeshua is Moshiach. He's the Messiah, the son of the living Elohim. Philip said that. Peter says that. Mary and Martha say that. This is a creed. This is something we believe in. As regards me and my house, we will serve Yahweh. Now, Deuteronomy 12, 4 and 5. Not so must you behave towards Yahweh your Elohim. You see, these other Elim, these other gods, they were worshipped on the high hills. They would be worshipped in the valleys. They would be worshipped in the river. They would be worshipped here and there. There was these gods or spirits or more demon spirits that were worshipped, just like the Kachinas. There's the Kachina of the Sandias. There's the Kachina of the Rio Grande. There's all these mountains, Mount Taylor, the spirit of Mount Taylor, and all these things around here and in other places throughout the world. Everybody has their sacred places, their sacred little areas. Well, that's not the way it is with Adonai. You do not do that with Adonai. Now, we will love Him and serve Him everywhere that we are. But there was something particular with Israel that Adonai said to His people. You must seek Yahweh your Elohim in the place which He will choose from all the tribes, there to set His name, Shmo, to set His name, and give it a home. That is where you must go. One of the particulars of Israelite faith and doctrine of Haderech Yahweh is that there is a centralized place for worship, for sacrifice, and for the Moedim. With the exception of Pesach, which is done in a home, any place in the Jerusalem area or in the temple area, the Mishkan area, everything has to be done in the Mishkan and or the temple and in the place that He will choose. Remember, they're still on the east bank. This isn't going to happen for another several hundred years. But Adonai says there is a place that I'm going to choose from one of the tribes. There, that's the only place where sacrifice, where worship, and the Moedim must be followed. Deuteronomy 12:10. You are about to cross the Yarden and live in the land given you by Yahweh your Elohim as your heritage. As your heritage. By the way, notice that. He will grant you shalom, peace from all your enemies surrounding you, and you will live in safety to the place chosen by Yahweh your Elohim as a home for His name. To that place you must bring all the things that I am laying down on you, your burnt offerings, your sacrifices, your tithes, your offerings, held high, and all the best of your possessions dedicated by you to Yahweh. That is where you will rejoice in the presence of Yahweh your Elohim. You and your sons and daughters, your serving men, women, the Levite living among your community, since he has no share or heritage of his own among you. Take care you do not offer your burnt offerings on all the sacred places you see. As they would go from different places, go pilgrimage to back to Jerusalem for all the Moedim. There was these high places that the Canaanites and other peoples would worship. No, you bypass them, leave them alone. Don't go there. Only in the place that Yahweh chooses. In one of your tribes may you offer your burnt offerings and all the things which I have commanded you. Again, there is a centralized place. And every one of us here must start thinking of that. There is a centralized place of the worship of Yahweh, past, present, and future, that every one of us must have. You know, we meet in this building. This is just a building. And this building is, in a sense, a study hall. This is a study place. But one of the things that every believer needs to focus on, whether you call yourself Jewish, Messianic, Christian, every one of us must be today Jerusalem focused. Jerusalem focused. And we'll get to that in a second here. Now, the history of the centralized place. First of all, we had the tabernacle. Moses built the tabernacle. Aaron and the Kohanim, the Levites, they were the ones that built it and used it as the place of meeting, the Ohel Moed. And then we had the first temple, David, but then Solomon's the one that built it. We had the second temple, that was destroyed, as we're going to see, that second temple. Zerubbabel, Ezra, Nehemiah, King Herod remodeled it, completely remodeled that. And then we have a 2,000-year gap. And then there's going to be a third temple. We don't know too much about that. We'll get some verses there. And then there's going to be a fourth temple. And that fourth temple is going to be the temple of Yeshua, the Messiah. Now, the first centralized place was a tabernacle, Hamishkan, the Ohel Moed, the meeting place. And of course, in 1445, this was built in Mount Sinai. After we left Egypt, it took 3 months, 90 days to get to Sinai. And there, after the giving of the 10 words, Adonai called us to build the Mishkan, the tabernacle. And we left Sinai. We're in the wilderness for 40 years. And when Joshua crosses over, he crosses over, and there, the first place that the Mishkan was reset for several hundred years was in Shiloh. Not Shiloh, but Shiloh. And it was there in Shiloh. Now from there, we lost sight of the Mishkan itself. Now, the ark, which was in the Holy of Holies, was taken out and put in front in a battle against the enemy. But it was stolen, it was taken, and it wandered for several years from Ha-Ezer to Ashdod to Gath, Ekron, Bet Shemesh, Kiryat HaYarmin. Finally, in the time of David, it was taken to Jerusalem. Now, that's the ark there. Now, we don't know what happened to the actual Mishkan. Scholars have several things. In fact, today there are some excavations going on in Shiloh, and we've had the rabbi from Shiloh here several times, and he's given us in the past. Now there's some new excavations of Shiloh where they actually found the actual place where the Mishkan was set up. But what happened is that in the first temple, Adonai, David says, I'm living in a house of cedar, and the Ark of the Covenant, there's no place for it. David says, I'm going to build a house. Of course, Adonai says, no, you're not going to build me a house. I'm going to build you a house. I'm going to build you a house. But you're not going to build me a house because you're a man of war. And, of course, he took a census that Adonai did not like. David buys Mount Moriah, which, again, Mount Moriah, which was the place of the sacrifice of Isaac by Abraham. The same place, that very same place, which today is the Temple Mount. There the angel of Elohim appeared to David. David bought that place. What's interesting is the places that Abraham and Yaakov and David bought. In Hebron, in Shem, in Jerusalem. These were bought by the patriarchs. Interesting that those very same places are places that in today's Jewish Muslim contentions are being fought for. But they were given by Adonai to the patriarchs and down the line to now and to Messiah, Yeshua. They belong to Messiah. But again, they're trying to steal them. They're bought and paid for. Again, this was the threshing floor of Araunah, the Jebusite, and David bought it. He purchased it. Of course, it was Solomon ben David, the son of David, that actually builds the temple. And in 967, he Hanukkahs the temple. He dedicates the temple. Remember, the word Hanukkah means to dedicate. The Hanukkah we celebrate today is not the only Hanukkah. In fact, the first Hanukkah was Moses with the Mishkan. The second Hanukkah was Solomon with the first temple. And of course, every temple has been Hanukkah since, and they will be in the future. And by the way, Hanukkah is 8 days because Hanukkah, a dedication of a temple always occurs on Sukkot. And Sukkot is always for 8 days. The 8 days of what's called the Hanukkah, or the 8 candles of the Hanukkah, has nothing to do with the oil reserve. It has to do that what we call Hanukkah today, the Hanukkah of the Maccabees, is actually called in the book of Maccabees a little tabernacles, a little Sukkot, a miniature Sukkot. It was dedicated 586. Think of it. In 967, it was dedicated. In 586, the 9th of Av, it was destroyed by the Babylonians. And so Josephus actually says that the temple was burnt down 470 years afterwards. Again, there's a little bit of a difference there. But the first temple was destroyed. Now, this was the centralized place for these hundreds of years. Of course, the first temple, David and Solomon, was destroyed, 7-year captivity in Babylon. After the temple was destroyed in 586. Again, the second temple was made by Zerubbabel, Ezra, Nehemiah. King Herod completely remodeled it, and that was destroyed in 70 A.D., and since then, there is a 2,000-year gap that Israel has been without a temple. Of course, the second temple, Zerubbabel from captivity, in 516, it was rebuilt. Nehemiah came in 444 and worked on the walls and the doors. Now, the little temple of Zerubbabel was very modest compared to Solomon's, and very modest compared to, again, King Herod's remodel. King Herod actually remodeled it over the Zerubbabel temple, and after that was done, he completely took that one apart. Again, destroyed on the 9th of Av in 70 of our common era. So both temples were destroyed on the same day. Here is a picture looking north of where the temple was. Here where the Dome of the Rock is. And I should have blacked that out. And here's the Alaska Mosque. But here is where the temple stood. This is the eastern wall, the portico of Solomon. Here was court of the Gentiles. Here are what we call today the southern steps. The Temple Mount is called Har HaMoriah, or Mount Moriah, Har Habait, the Temple Mount, or the Mount of the House, the Mount of the House. It's a 36, this is 36 acres. The original one of Solomon was this 500 by 500 cubit area, and the temple was there. You see where the temple is overlaid over what is now the Dome of the Rock, and here's the Alaska Mosque, and then again the Court of the Gentiles, and this is the inner area of the Temple Mount today. This is, you could walk these walks today. 36 acres. Since 637, it contains the Dome of the Rock and the Alaska Mosque. The Dome of the Rock is not a mosque, by the way. It's just a dome over the rock where the Holy of Holies was. Here's another picture of it looking northeast. Here's the Muslim Dome of the Rock. In 70 AD, the temple was destroyed by the Romans. It was burnt down. We see the burning and the way, the temple was built of limestone. And all this here was gold. And so the Romans wanted the gold. And so what they did is they got pitch, oily thing, and started burning. Well, the heat of the fire made the limestone at the bottom become as grain, become as sand, and all of a sudden the weight, like the Twin Towers, brought the temple down so they could get the gold. And all that is left today is stones. Stones upon stones upon stones that are left. And you could also see here the actual steps where Yeshua walked, and these are still the very stones where he walked on, destroyed, brought down with all these rocks. The third temple, there is a third temple coming. There's a Zionist movement, a Temple Mount movement today. The getting of the red heifers, the getting of the altar stones already. All the Temple Institute has all, in fact, through some of the Temple Institute people, and we have some of the things that they have given us. But again, this third temple that is coming is not Ezekiel's temple, as people are saying. This is going to be a temple of deception, a temple in which the anti-Messiah is going to take over. Remember, in Daniel 9:27, Adonai says that a man is coming. He, and talking about Daniel 9 and the destruction, and he will make a covenant with the many. And the many is an idiom for Israel. Remember what Adonai told Abraham. Your descendants will be as many as the stars and as the sand of the sea. Israel is the many for the space of 7 years. And in the middle of the 7 years, he will set up the abomination of desolation in the wing of the temple. Well, we know that temple, those temples were destroyed. Herod rebuilt it, and that was destroyed. The Romans never, since Daniel, the Romans never set up an abomination of desolation in the temple. They just destroyed it for the gold. They didn't use it as a place of worship. Now, Daniel in Daniel 11 talks about the abomination of desolation that is coming. And Daniel is actually prophesying Antiochus Epiphanes, which came in 167. And he prophesies him. And Antiochus Epiphanes is the model for the coming anti-Messiah. And Antiochus Epiphanes actually set up a statue in the temple, a statue of Jupiter Zeus, the father god of Greco-Roman culture. And he set up this statue with his own face. And he proclaimed himself God. Antiochus thought he was God. And he forced everyone to worship this statue. Now, this statue of Antiochus was a low-tech statue. It was low-tech because it was either made of wood, stone, or whatever, but it didn't do nothing. Now, one thing that we know is that Yeshua in Matthew 24 says, this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world as a witness to all nations, and then the end will come. Then the end will come. Then the end will come. So when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel, let the reader understand. Well, Yeshua was talking about the Daniel 9:27, of which Antiochus was the model. But since Yeshua again, after the destruction of the temple, the Romans didn't do it, and we haven't had another temple. There is a temple coming. Of course, in 2 Thessalonians 2 and following, it talks about there's going to come the enemy, the lost one, and he will lift himself so higher than all Elohim, that he will proclaim himself to be Elohim. This is anti-Messiah. This is the beast. In Revelation 13, 1 and following, it talks about this beast and a second beast. And the second beast will give authority and power and all this. And the first beast will now set up this statue of himself with the false prophet. But that statue is going to be a high-tech statue, not a low-tech like the one that Daniel prophesied in 11 and Antiochus was the model of. This statue is going to be given power to live, to talk. Very much what a hologram would be. I remember going to Disneyland and seeing the robotics of Lincoln, if you've been there, and saying to myself way back then, oh man, maybe that's what it's going to be. But all of a sudden we're so far from robotics. Now AI and all this other stuff and stuff that we might not even have conceived yet. But this beast, this anti-Messiah, in the middle of the 7 years, is going to set up the 666 system and proclaim himself in this third temple. Of course, when Yeshua comes, all that's going to be gone away with. And a fourth temple, the Ezekiel temple, is going to be built. Yeshua is going to be king and high priest of that. Notice that in all of the Ezekiel 40 and following, talking about the temple and everything that has to do with the millennial kingdom, and no place does it say there that there's going to be a high priest. Everyone is mentioned except the high priest. Why? Because the Prince Messiah, King Messiah, is going to be the high priest. And yes, there's going to be Kohanim, but the Kohanim are not going to do sacrifices. It says the sacrificial system is going to be restored. But it actually says that the prince is going to be in charge. The high priest is going to be in charge of the sacrifice. And of course, the land of Israel is going to be rebuilt. Jerusalem primacy, Micah. Now it shall come to pass in the latter days, in the Acharit Chayamim, the last days, that the mountain of Beit Yahweh, of the house of Yahweh, shall be established on the top of the mountains, and shall be exalted above the hills, and peoples shall flow to it. This is in the millennial kingdom. Many nations shall come and say, come, let us go up to the mountain of Yahweh, to the house of the Elohim of Yaakov. He will teach us his ways. That's Torah. And he shall walk, and we shall walk in his path. Let's start now. Let's start now. World, let's start now. For out of Sion, Torah shall go forth, and the word of Yahweh from Jerusalem. This is what I call Jerusalem primacy. That's why when we do the feasts, we don't do them according to the modern Hillel Jewish calendar. We do them according to the biblical calendar, which is the crescent moon, as we're going to see. And we're waiting for, tonight is a conjunction, and so we are expecting the new moon of the 6th month, maybe Monday or Tuesday. So let's wait on that. The feasts are celebrated in Jerusalem. We are here, the end of our parashah talks about the feast, Passover. And for those of you that have joined us in the last year, one of the things that we do here is we do all the feasts. We do not have a congregational Passover here. I teach all the patriarchs, all the men, to do Passover in their home, and those that do not have a home, we join with other homes, because Passover should never be congregational. It's not. Passover is a private meal among believers. It should never be open to the public. You should never have to buy tickets for. It should never be something that you invite non-believers or other even Christians that might not understand. This is not a time to preach the gospel. This is a time for those that are insiders should fellowship with Adonai. Adonai, the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Again, all Jerusalem primacy. Everything is from when it's in Jerusalem. The counting of the weeks, Pentecost, the Feast of Weeks, the Feast of Sukkot, the Regelim, 3. There's so much to say here, and I just lost my time. Here's our calendar for This year, conjunction is today. We're going to cite the Rosh Chodesh, the new moon, probably on Monday or Tuesday. Get your trumpets out. And then in 30 days, we will have the seventh month, Yom Teruah. Again, we will let you know which are the actual dates. For that day, on the 29th, we will meet the 29th, and we will meet the 30th if it doesn't fall on the 29th. Of course, 10 days later would be Yom Kippur, and 15 days later from trumpets would be Chag Sukkot, the Feast of Tabernacles. And so there's a lot coming up. Hopefully every one of you could join us for our annual Feast of Sukkot, citywide here in Albuquerque. We would invite anybody from different places to come. Let's go ahead and stand as we give honor and glory to Adonai. We love you, Adonai. There's so much to teach and so little time. In the name of Yeshua, Father, do a mighty work with your people. Allow them to take the little bits and pieces that we're able to give and expand it. Allow your Ruach to expand it in them. Yerevecha Yahweh va'ish merecha. Air Yahweh panavelecha vichunecha. Asa Yahweh panavelecha vayasem lecha. Shalom. May Yahweh bless you and keep you. May Yahweh make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May Yahweh lift up the light of his countenance upon you and give you his peace. Shalom, shalom. Have a good day.
Shalom, shalom. Welcome to Olive Tree Fellowship and Torah Unleashed Ministries. Thank you for joining us on our channel. If you have enjoyed this teaching and would like to see more, please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Don't forget to click the notification bell so that you can be notified when we have new videos. If you would like to support Olive Tree Fellowship and Torah Unleashed Ministries, please visit us at olivetreefellowship.com or torahunleashed.org. We thank you for your past support and hope to continue with you. Shalom, shalom. Have a good day. Shalom, shalom y bienvenidos a Olive Tree y a la Torah Desatada. Les doy gracias a ustedes y a Adonai por su apoyo que nos han dado aquí. Y si quieren continuar a hacer una donación, pueden ir aquí en torahunleashed.org o en olivetreefellowship.com y ahí pueden dar una donación. Su apoyo, su ayuda es importante en estos días. Shalom, shalom.